The lights of Valara Prime sparkled against the black void of space like tiny diamonds scattered across a dark cloth. The massive trading station spun slowly on its axis, its gleaming metal surface reflecting the light of 3 distant suns. Inside the station, 50,000 beings from dozens of different worlds went about their daily business, buying and selling goods from across the galaxy. Commander Hyun-woo stood at the observation deck of the central command tower, watching the endless stream of ships coming and going from the docking bays. Cargo vessels from the crystal worlds of Althar brought precious gems that sang with inner light. Transport ships from the gas giant colonies carried rare atmospheric compounds in massive pressure tanks. Even the insect-like Clixon had arrived with their bioorganic trade goods that could heal wounds or enhance mental abilities. It was a peaceful sight that filled Hyun-woo with pride. Valara Prime had been his responsibility for 7 years now, and in that time, not a single violent incident had occurred between the different species. The Galactic Commerce Alliance had built this station as proof that all races could work together in harmony, and Hyun-woo had made sure that vision became reality. His assistant, a tall, blue-skinned Vorthak named Thesek, approached with the daily reports. The amphibious being moved with the graceful swimming motions that his species used even in air, his gill slits fluttering slightly as he breathed. "Commander, all trade negotiations are proceeding smoothly," Thesek said in his bubbling voice. "The Althari delegation has agreed to the new gemstone pricing structure. The Clixon hive ships are loading their biocargo without incident. Even the typically difficult Zephyrians have approved the station's new air filtration system." Hyun-woo nodded and took the datapad, scanning through the routine information. Everything seemed normal. Traffic was heavy but manageable. The station's defense grid showed no threats. The small patrol fleet of 6 lightly armed vessels reported calm conditions in the outer system. That was when the alarms began to sound. A piercing wail echoed through the command center as red warning lights bathed everything in crimson. Hyun-woo and Thesek rushed to the main sensor console, where Technician Mirai was frantically working at her controls. Her face had gone pale as she stared at the readings appearing on her screen. "Commander, we have multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace at the system's edge," Mirai reported, her voice shaking slightly. "The computer is having trouble getting an exact count, but preliminary scans suggest at least 40 vessels, large ones." Hyun-woo leaned over her shoulder to look at the display. The ships appearing on the scanner were unlike anything in the station's database. They were long and predatory, with sharp angular lines and weapon ports that bristled along, their hulls like the spines of some deadly creature. Each vessel was easily 3 times the size of Valara Prime's patrol ships. "Are they responding to our standard greeting protocols?" Hyun-woo asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Negative, Commander. No response to any communication attempts. They're maintaining radio silence and continuing their approach vector toward the station." Thesek's gill slits flapped rapidly, a sign of extreme anxiety in his species. "Commander, perhaps we should contact the Galactic Council. Surely there must be some misunderstanding." Hyun-woo shook his head as he watched the unknown fleet's steady advance on the scanner. "There's no time, Thesek. At their current speed, they'll be here in less than 2 hours." The command center had filled with other station personnel, all of them watching the main display with growing concern. Most of the species represented on Valara Prime had never seen a military fleet before. The concept of organized violence between civilized races was something their peaceful cultures had evolved beyond thousands of years ago. But Hyun-woo had studied galactic history. He knew that there were still aggressive species out there in the unknown regions, raiders and conquerors who preyed on peaceful worlds. The approaching ships had all the hallmarks of a military force, and not a friendly one. "Mirai, get me Captain Jong-soo on the patrol fleet command ship," Hyun-woo ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the weathered face of Captain Jong-soo aboard his patrol vessel. The older man's expression was grim as he looked at his own sensor readings. "Commander, I'm seeing the same thing you are," Jong-soo said without waiting for questions. "These aren't merchant vessels or exploration ships. Those are warships, and they're heading straight for us. Can your patrol fleet intercept them?" Jong-soo was quiet for a long moment, studying his tactical display. "Commander, I have 6 patrol ships designed for customs enforcement and emergency rescue. Each of those incoming vessels outmasses my entire fleet combined. Our weapons are meant for disabling civilian ships that refuse inspection, not fighting a military force. Hyunwoo felt a cold knot forming in his stomach. What are you saying, Captain? I'm saying that if those ships mean trouble, there's nothing we can do to stop them. The communication channel crackled with static, and suddenly a new voice filled the command center. It was harsh and guttural, speaking in a language that the translation computers struggled to process. Attention, creatures of Valara Prime. This is Warlord Thex of the Ravak Syndicate. Your pathetic little trading post now belongs to us. Prepare for immediate boarding and surrender all station personnel for processing. Any resistance will result in the total destruction of your station and all aboard. Silence fell over the command center as the translation finished. 50,000 beings from dozens of different worlds were about to become prisoners of a species that none of them had. Ever heard of Technician Mireille looked up from her console with tears in her eyes. Commander, sensors show they're launching fighter craft, hundreds of them. On the main screen, Captain Jong-Soo's face had hardened into a mask of determination. Commander, I'm going to try to buy you some time. Get the civilians to the emergency shelters. Captain, you don't have to. Yes, I do, Jong-Soo interrupted. It's what we signed up for when we took these jobs. Protecting people. The patrol fleet of 6 small ships moved to intercept the approaching swarm of Ravak fighters. For a brief moment, Hyunwoo allowed himself to hope that perhaps the enemy had underestimated the defensive capabilities of even lightly armed patrol vessels. That hope died as the first exchange of weapons fire lit up the darkness. The Ravak fighters moved with deadly precision, their energy weapons cutting through the patrol ship's shields like they weren't even there. One by one, the brave little vessels disappeared in brilliant flashes of light. Captain Jong-Soo's ship was the last to go. His final transmission was clear and steady. Good luck, Commander. Take care of our people. Hyunwoo closed his eyes as Jong-Soo's ship vanished from the sensors. Around him, the command center staff worked frantically to coordinate evacuation procedures. But everyone knew it was hopeless. The station had been designed as a place of peace and commerce, not a fortress. There was nowhere to run and no way to fight. The Ravak fleet surrounded Valara Prime like a pack of predators circling wounded prey. Boarding pods began launching from the enemy ships, heading for docking ports all around the station. Soon, alien soldiers would be marching through corridors where children played and families lived. Hyunwoo made his decision. He activated the emergency beacon system and began broadcasting on frequencies that hadn't been used in over a century. Most of the codes were so old that they predated the formation of the Galactic Commerce Alliance itself. This is Commander Hyunwoo of Valara Prime, he said into the microphone. We are under attack by an unknown military force called the Ravak Syndicate. 50,000 civilians are in immediate danger. Any human vessel receiving this transmission, please respond. We need help. This is an SOS. Please, if anyone can hear this, we need help. He repeated the message in the ancient Earth languages he remembered from his childhood, hoping against hope that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, someone was listening. Someone who might care that innocent people were about to die. As the first Ravak boarding pods crashed into Valara Prime's docking bays, Hyunwoo kept broadcasting his desperate plea into the void. The human dreadnought Soul's Fury drifted through the darkness between stars like a massive predator, hunting in the deep ocean. Its dark gray hull stretched for over 2 kilometers, bristling with weapon systems and sensor arrays that could detect threats from light years away. Inside the ship's armored belly, 3,000 crew members went about their duties with the quiet efficiency that came from years of military training. Captain So Young stood on the bridge of her ship, watching the star charts that showed their patrol route through the Outer Rim territories. She was a woman in her 40s with short black hair and the kind of steady gaze that came from commanding one of humanity's most powerful warships for the past 8 years. Her crew respected her because she had earned that respect through countless missions in the dangerous regions of space where peaceful species feared to travel. The Soul's Fury was not alone in the darkness. 3 other human warships moved in formation with the dreadnought, maintaining perfect spacing as they patrolled the borders between civilized space and the unknown regions beyond. The destroyer Busan Lightning kept pace on the port side, its smaller but equally deadly frame cutting through space with graceful menace. The heavy cruiser Incheon's Wrath took position to starboard, while the frigate Dijon's Edge scouted ahead, its advanced sensors probing for any sign of trouble. Communications officer Jin Ho sat at his station monitoring dozens of different radio frequencies, listening for any sign of distress or unusual activity. It was routine work, the kind that filled long weeks of patrol duty in the empty spaces between star systems. Most of the transmissions he picked up were routine merchant traffic, automated navigation beacons, or the occasional research vessel requesting safe passage through human-controlled space. Then the old frequency crackled to life. Jin Ho straightened in his chair as the ancient emergency codes began streaming across his display. These were frequencies that hadn't been used since the early days of human space exploration, back when Earth's colonies were small and vulnerable. The encryption was so old that his computer needed several seconds to decode the message. "Captain," Jin Ho called out, his voice tight with concern. "I'm receiving a distress signal on emergency frequency 77 Alpha. It's using old Earth military codes." Captain So Young turned from the star charts and walked to Jin Ho's station. "Play it back." The bridge fell silent as Commander Hyun-woo's voice filled the air, speaking first in standard galactic common and then in the Korean language that So Young had learned as a child on the colony world of New Seoul. "This is Commander Hyun-woo of Valara Prime. We are under attack by an unknown military force called the Ravok Syndicate. 50,000 civilians are in immediate danger. Any human vessel receiving this transmission, please respond. We need help. This is an SOS." The message repeated several times before falling silent. Captain So Young stood motionless for a long moment, processing what she had just heard. Around her, the bridge crew waited for orders, their faces reflecting the same mixture of anger and determination that she felt building in her chest. "Jin Ho, verify that transmission. I want to make sure it's genuine." The communications officer's fingers flew over his controls, running the message through every authentication system the ship possessed. "Captain, the encryption keys match. Archived Earth military codes from 70 years ago. Voice analysis confirms the speaker is human, and the distress protocols are authentic." Navigator Sung Ho looked up from his charts. "Captain, Valara Prime is a known neutral trading station. According to our databases, it's home to civilians from dozens of different species. If they're under attack..." So Young nodded grimly. She knew what her navigator was thinking. Valara Prime was exactly the kind of peaceful target that raiders and conquerors loved to hit. 50,000 defenseless civilians would fetch a high price in the slave markets that existed in the darker corners of the galaxy. "What's our current position relative to Valara Prime?" she asked. "Approximately 6 hours at maximum burn," Sung Ho replied. "But Captain, we're under strict orders to maintain our patrol route and avoid interference in non-human conflicts." Captain So Young was quiet for a moment, thinking about the regulations that governed human military operations in galactic space. The Galactic Council had made it clear that they viewed humanity's military capabilities with deep suspicion. Human warships were tolerated in their own territory, but any intervention in conflicts involving other species was strongly discouraged. The problem was that So Young had sworn an oath when she first put on her uniform. She had promised to protect innocent life wherever she found it, regardless of species or politics. That oath didn't come with exceptions for diplomatic convenience. "Captain," Jin Ho said suddenly, "I'm picking up similar distress signals from 2 other human vessels in the area. The destroyer Busan Lightning under Commander Do Hyun is requesting permission to break formation and respond. The heavy cruiser Incheon's Wrath is also reporting receipt of the distress call." So Young activated the ship's internal communication system. Her voice echoed through every corridor and compartment of the Soul's Fury as she addressed her crew. "All hands, this is the captain. We have just received a distress call from Valara Prime, a civilian trading station currently under attack by hostile forces. 50,000 innocent beings are in immediate danger, including human civilians serving in various capacities aboard the station." She paused, knowing that her next words would change everything. "I know that our orders are to maintain patrol and avoid involvement in non-human conflicts. But I also know that every person aboard this ship took an oath to protect the innocent, regardless of species. We are the only military force within range that can help those people. The ship's intercom crackled as voices responded from all over the vessel. The crew's answer was unanimous and immediate. They would go. All ships. This is Soul's Fury Actual, So Young broadcast to her small fleet. Set course for Valara Prime. Maximum burn. Signal the fleet command that we are responding to a humanitarian crisis. Any ship that wants to withdraw from this mission can do so now with no questions asked. None of the ships broke formation. As the 4 human warships changed course and began accelerating toward the Valara system, word of their mission began spreading through the human fleet network. Other captains monitoring the communications channels heard about the distress call and the response. Ships that were days away from Valara Prime began altering their own courses, joining what was rapidly becoming the largest human military operation in decades. The destroyer Busan Lightning under Commander Do Hyun abandoned its escort mission to protect a convoy of research vessels. The heavy cruiser Incheon's Wrath left its patrol route along the outer colonies. Even the massive battleship Daegu Thunder, humanity's most feared warship, began moving toward the crisis under the command of Admiral Taemin. Captain So Young stood on her bridge watching the tactical display as more and more human vessels appeared on the long-range sensors, all converging on a single point in space where innocent people were dying. She thought about the diplomatic consequences of what they were doing, the angry protests that would come from the Galactic Council, the political problems that would follow. Then she thought about 50,000 civilians trapped on a station, with no defenses, facing an enemy that saw them only as cargo to be sold or obstacles to be eliminated. Time to target? She asked her navigator. 5 hours, 37 minutes at current speed, Sung Ho replied. Take us to battle stations, So Young ordered. And send a message to Valara Prime on that same emergency frequency. Tell them help is coming. Throughout the Soul's Fury, alarms began sounding as the ship prepared for combat. Weapon systems came online, shields powered up to full strength, and damage control teams took their positions. In the armory, Marines began checking their equipment and loading ammunition that hadn't been used in anger for many years. The sleeping giants of humanity's war machine were awakening, and they were very, very angry. As the human fleet raced through hyperspace toward Valara Prime, Captain So Young allowed herself a small, cold smile. The Ravak Syndicate had made a serious mistake when they attacked innocent civilians. They were about to learn why the rest of the galaxy feared the humans who had crawled up from Earth's Deathworld surface and decided to take their violence to the stars. In 6 hours, the Ravak would discover what happened when you woke the monsters, that humanity kept leashed in the darkness between worlds. Deep in the engine room of the Soul's Fury, Chief Engineer Minho wiped sweat from his forehead as he monitored the massive fusion reactors that powered the dreadnought through hyperspace. The ship was pushing its engines harder than they had been pushed in years, racing toward Valara Prime at maximum speed. Around him, his engineering team worked with practiced efficiency, making adjustments and repairs that would keep the ship running at peak performance. Young Ensign Q Jin approached Minho with a data pad showing power consumption readings. The ensign was fresh from the academy, barely 20 years old, and this was his first real mission aboard a frontline warship. His eyes were wide with a mixture of excitement and fear as he watched the veteran engineers work. Chief Engineer, Minho, Q Jin said, his voice shaking slightly. The weapon systems are drawing more power than I've ever seen. Are we really going to fight an entire enemy fleet with just 4 ships? Minho looked at the young man and saw his own reflection from 30 years ago, when he had been a scared ensign asking similar questions. He set down his tools and gestured for Kyujin to follow him to a quiet corner of the engine room. Let me tell you something about human ships, Ensign, Minho said, and about why the other species in this galaxy are afraid of us. He pulled up a holographic display showing the technical specifications of the Soul's Fury compared to typical vessels from other civilizations. The difference was immediately obvious. Where alien ships prioritized comfort, efficiency, and peaceful purposes, human vessels were built for one thing: survival in the most hostile environments imaginable. You see, Most species in this galaxy evolved on what we call garden worlds, Minho explained. Stable climates, gentle weather, abundant food, no major predators. Their ships reflect that peaceful evolution. They're built for exploration, trade, and scientific research. The hologram shifted to show Earth, humanity's homeworld. The planet appeared as a swirling mass of violent storms, seismic activity, and extreme weather patterns that would kill most alien species within hours. But humans, we came from Earth, a Class 12 Deathworld. Everything on that planet was designed by evolution to kill us. The weather could freeze us solid or boil. Us alive, the animals wanted to eat us, even the plants were toxic. The ground itself would shake and crack open without warning. Kyujin stared at the image of Earth with new understanding. But Chief, how did we survive on such a terrible world? We became terrible too, Minho said simply. Not terrible in a cruel way, but terrible in the sense of being absolutely deadly when we needed to be. Our bodies adapted to survive crushing gravity that would flatten most aliens. Our reflexes became fast enough to dodge predators that moved like lightning. Our brains learned to process violence and danger in ways that peaceful species never needed to develop. The engineer pulled up another display showing human military doctrine compared to other species. While most galactic civilizations had police forces designed to handle rare criminal activity, humans had developed something entirely different. Military forces designed to fight other military forces in total warfare. For millions of years, we didn't just fight our environment, Minho continued. We fought each other. Humans waging war against other humans, each group trying to survive in competition with equally dangerous opponents. Our weapons, our tactics, our entire approach to conflict was refined through countless wars against enemies who were just as smart and just as deadly as we were. He gestured toward the massive weapon systems visible through the engine rooms, viewports. These guns weren't designed to fight peaceful merchants or lightly armed patrol ships. They were built to fight other human warships in battles where the losing side would be completely destroyed. Every system on this ship, from the engines to the life support, was designed to keep working even while under attack by weapons that could crack planets. In the ship's medical bay, Dr. Dayun was having a similar conversation with her staff as they prepared for potential casualties. Nurse Haiwan had asked why human medical equipment looked so different from the healing devices used by other species. Most alien medical technology is designed to treat accidents and natural illnesses, Dayun explained as she checked their supplies of emergency surgery equipment. A broken bone from a fall, a disease caused by bacteria, maybe a minor injury from a manufacturing accident. She held up a piece of human medical equipment that looked more like a piece of industrial machinery than a healing device. Human medicine was developed to treat combat injuries, wounds caused by weapons designed to kill other humans, burns from energy weapons, trauma from explosive devices, injuries that would be considered impossible by most galactic standards. Haiwan looked disturbed by the implications. Doctor, are we really that different from other species? Different, enough that most aliens consider us barely civilized monsters, Dayun replied honestly. What we consider normal physical capabilities they see as superhuman. Our bone density alone would let us survive impacts that would kill most other species. Our muscle fiber composition gives us strength that they can't match. Our pain tolerance is so high that we can keep fighting with injuries that would leave them unconscious. She pulled up a medical scan showing human physiology compared to typical alien biology. But the real difference is up here, she said, pointing to the brain. Scan. Humans have neural pathways dedicated to processing violence and tactical thinking that peaceful species never developed. We can make life and death decisions in seconds, coordinate complex military operations under extreme stress, and maintain fighting effectiveness even when terrified. Meanwhile, on Valara Prime, the Ravak occupation was proceeding exactly as Warlord Thex had planned. His soldiers moved through the station's corridors, rounding up civilians and cataloging them for transport to the slave markets. The aliens offered no resistance beyond cowering in fear and begging for mercy. Thex himself walked through the station's main commercial district, observing the variety of species that had been captured. The crystalline Althari would fetch high prices as decorative slaves. The amphibious Vorthak could work in underwater environments that other species couldn't survive. Even the insect-like Klixen had value for their ability to produce bioorganic compounds. "Report," Thex ordered his second-in-command, a scarred veteran named Krivak. 50,000 civilians secured, my lord," Krivak replied. "No military resistance encountered. The station's defense fleet was eliminated without difficulty. We should be ready to begin transport operations within 6 hours." Thex nodded in satisfaction. This had been one of the easiest conquests in recent memory. The peaceful species that inhabited this region of space were so soft and helpless that conquering them was almost disappointing. There was no glory in defeating enemies who wouldn't even try to fight back. "What about that distress signal we detected?" Thex asked. "Still broadcasting, my lord. The station commander is apparently hiding somewhere in the lower levels." "Should we hunt him down?" "Let him broadcast," Thex said with amusement. "Who is going to answer? The Galactic Council? They have no military forces. The local governments? They're even weaker than the beings we just captured." He looked out through the station's viewports at the stars beyond, completely unaware that, in hyperspace moving faster than the speed of light, humanity's war machine was bearing down on his position like an avalanche of steel and fury. In a few hours, Warlord Thex would learn the difference between conquering peaceful civilizations and facing a species that had evolved in the crucible of a Deathworld, then spent millions of years perfecting the art of warfare against equally dangerous opponents. The Ravak Syndicate was about to discover why the rest of the galaxy whispered about humans in the dark spaces between stars, and why even the most aggressive alien species gave human territory a wide berth. They were about to meet monsters who had learned to be heroes. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Valara system, like predators emerging from the darkness to hunt. The 4 warships materialized in perfect formation, their dark hulls reflecting the distant starlight as their sensors immediately began scanning for threats. What they found made every human aboard the ships clench their fists in anger. Valara Prime hung in space surrounded by 40 Ravak vessels, the peaceful trading station looking like a wounded bird surrounded by circling vultures. The enemy fleet had formed a loose blockade around the station, their weapons trained on the civilian structure as boarding pods continued to ferry prisoners to the waiting ships. Captain So Young stood on the bridge of the Soul's Fury, watching the tactical display with cold fury. Her sensors showed the scattered debris of the station's defense fleet floating in space like broken toys. 6 brave crews had died trying to protect 50,000 innocent beings, and their sacrifice would not be in vain. "Communications, open a channel to the enemy fleet," So Young ordered. "Channel open, Captain," Jin Ho reported. So Young's voice carried across space with the authority of someone accustomed to command. "This is Captain So Young of the Human Defense Force vessel Soul's Fury. You are ordered to release all civilian prisoners and withdraw from this system immediately. This is your only warning." The response came quickly, filled with the arrogant confidence of a predator that had never met anything more dangerous than itself. Warlord Thex's harsh voice crackled through the speakers. "Human vessel, you are greatly outnumbered. I count 4 ships against my fleet of 40. Surrender now and I will allow your crews to serve in my slave pits instead of spacing them immediately." So Young looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. Navigator Sung Ho was checking weapon firing solutions. Tactical Officer Hee-jin had her fingers hovering over the trigger controls. Communications Officer Jin Ho was recording everything for the inevitable inquiry that would follow. Every face showed the same cold determination. "Warlord Thex," So Young said calmly, "you have made 2 critical errors in judgment. First, you assume that numbers matter more than capability. Second, you have threatened human lives. Correct both mistakes now or we will correct them for you." Thex's laughter echoed across the communication channel. "Foolish humans. You are barely civilized animals who happen to stumble onto space travel. Watch as I demonstrate the price of defying the Ravak Syndicate." The nearest Ravak heavy cruiser opened fire on the destroyer Busan Lightning. Energy beams that could have vaporized civilian vessels struck the human ship's shields and scattered harmlessly into space. Commander Do-hyun's voice came across the fleet communication channel with deadly calm. Soul's Fury, this is Busan Lightning. We are taking fire from enemy vessels. Request permission to return fire. Permission granted, So Young replied. All ships weapons free. Show them what humans do to those who threaten innocence. The Busan Lightning's response was swift and overwhelming. A single torpedo launched from the destroyer's forward tubes, its warhead containing enough antimatter to power a small city. The weapon struck the Ravak heavy cruiser amidships, and the enemy vessel simply ceased to exist, vaporized in a burst of energy that lit up the entire system. The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds before the Ravak fleet opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missile salvos, and plasma cannons filled the space between the two fleets with deadly light. The human ships moved into their attack formation with a precision that spoke of countless hours of training and actual combat experience. The Guillotine, Soul's Fury's main gun, spoke for the first time in 2 years. Massive particle beams lanced out across space, each shot carefully aimed and devastatingly effective. Where the beams touched Ravak vessels, armor plating boiled away, and internal explosions tore the ships apart from within. Tactical Officer Heejin worked at her controls with the efficiency of a surgeon, coordinating the Dreadnought's weapon systems to maximize damage while conserving ammunition. Captain, enemy formation is breaking. They're trying to scatter. Don't let them, So Young ordered. Jinho, signal the fleet. Standard engagement. Pattern 7. No survivors, no escape. The human ships moved like dancers in a deadly ballet, each vessel taking its assigned position to create overlapping fields of fire that turned the space around Valera Prime into a killing ground. The heavy cruiser Incheon's Wrath under Captain Ji-un swept around the enemy fleet's flank, its guns picking off Ravak vessels with mechanical precision. The frigate Daejeon's Edge, smallest of the human ships but no less deadly, darted between enemy formations like a shark among schools of fish. Its point defense systems knocked down incoming missiles while its torpedo tubes sent precise shots into the engines of fleeing enemy vessels. What had started as a battle quickly became a massacre. The Ravak Syndicate's warships had been designed to fight other alien vessels, ships built by peaceful species who viewed warfare as an unfortunate necessity to be ended as quickly as possible. They were not prepared to face vessels built by a species that had spent millions of years perfecting the art of killing their own kind. Human weapons didn't just destroy enemy ships. They destroyed them in ways that sent clear messages to any survivors. A Ravak battleship tried to flee only to have its engines surgically removed by particle beam fire, leaving it drifting helpless in space. Another enemy vessel attempted to use civilian ships as shields, only to be destroyed by a torpedo that threaded through the gaps between innocent vessels without touching them. Warlord Thex, aboard his flagship at the center of the enemy formation, watched in growing horror as his fleet was systematically dismantled. These humans fought with a cold efficiency that he had never encountered before. They didn't waste ammunition on dramatic displays of firepower. Every shot was calculated, every movement planned, every tactic designed to maximize enemy casualties, while minimizing their own risk. All ships, fall back, Thex ordered frantically. Retreat to hyperspace jump distance. But the human formation had been designed to prevent exactly that escape. The Soul's Fury and its escorts had positioned themselves to cut off every retreat route, forcing the surviving Ravak vessels into an ever-tightening noose of crossfire. Captain, Tactical Officer Hae-jin reported, enemy fleet strength reduced to 60% and falling. 15 vessels destroyed, 12 disabled, remainder attempting to disengage. So Young watched the tactical display with professional satisfaction. The battle was proceeding exactly as human military doctrine predicted it would. Aggressive alien species like the Ravak were dangerous to peaceful civilizations, but they had never faced opponents who understood warfare at the level that humans did. Signal the enemy flagship, So Young ordered. Let's give Warlord Thex one more chance to surrender. Channel open, Captain. Warlord Thex, this is your final opportunity to surrender and release all prisoners. Comply immediately, or we will continue this demonstration of human military capability until your fleet no longer exists. Thex's response came through gritted teeth, his voice shaking with rage and fear. You cannot defeat us all, humans. The Ravok Syndicate spans dozens of systems. Even if you destroy my fleet, others will come. Then we will destroy them too. So Young replied simply, and we will keep destroying them until your people learn to leave innocent civilizations alone. The choice is yours, Warlord. Surrender now, or join your ancestors. On the tactical display, the remaining Ravok vessels were desperately trying to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jumps. But human ships were faster, human weapons had longer range, and human commanders had been trained to think 3 moves ahead of their enemies. The battle for Valara Prime was nearly over, and across the galaxy, other species monitoring the engagement were witnessing something that would change the balance of power forever. Humanity's self-imposed isolation was ending, and the rest of the universe was about to remember why Earth's children had been allowed to claim territory in the first place. The way. Monsters from the Deathworld were back in the game. The last of the Ravok fleet disappeared into hyperspace, leaving behind a debris field that told the story of their defeat. 28 enemy vessels had been destroyed outright, while the remaining 12 had fled with critical damage to their systems. Warlord Thex's flagship was among the survivors, but its proud banners were now nothing more than scorched metal drifting in the void. Captain So Young surveyed the tactical display with grim satisfaction. The immediate threat had been eliminated, but 50,000 civilians were still trapped aboard Valara Prime with an unknown number of Ravok soldiers. The real work was just beginning. All ships form boarding formation around the station, So Young ordered. Launch all assault shuttles and prepare marine units for immediate deployment. Throughout the human fleet, armored shuttles launched, from the warships' hangar bays like angry hornets swarming from their nests. Each shuttle carried a full squad of human marines equipped with weapons and armor that had been designed for the worst combat environments imaginable. Marine Captain Jae-sung stood in the troop compartment of the lead shuttle, checking his equipment one final time. Around him, 24 Marines from the Soul's Fury performed the same ritual they had practiced thousands of times in training and used dozens of times in real combat. Every weapon was loaded, every piece of armor sealed, every emergency system tested. Listen up, Jae-sung said to his troops as their shuttle approached Valara Prime's main docking bay. We have 50,000 civilians of various species scattered throughout this station. Unknown number of Ravok soldiers still aboard, possibly using hostages as human shields. He activated a holographic display showing the station's layout. Intelligence suggests most civilians are being held in the main commercial sectors here and here. Ravok Command Post is likely located in the central control tower. Our job is to secure the civilians and eliminate any remaining enemy presence. Sergeant Boram raised her hand. Rules of engagement, Captain? Protect the innocent at all costs, Jae-sung replied without hesitation. Any Ravok soldier who surrenders will be taken prisoner. Any who threaten civilians will be neutralized immediately. Remember, most of these alien species have never seen real combat. They're going to be terrified of us almost as much as they were afraid of the Ravok. The shuttle shuddered as it made contact with the station's docking mechanism. Emergency cutting tools began burning through the sealed airlock that the Ravok had welded shut during their occupation. Smoke filled the air as metal peeled away like paper under the intense heat of human military equipment. Breach in 10 seconds, the shuttle pilot announced. Captain Jae-sung activated his suit's external speakers and switched to the gentlest tone he could manage. Attention civilians in the immediate area. This is Captain Jae-sung of the Human Defense Force. We are here to rescue you. Please move away from the docking bay entrance and remain calm. The airlock exploded inward, and the Marines poured through the opening like a flood of armored death. Their movements were fast and precise, each soldier taking a predetermined position to establish a secure beachhead in the station's corridor. Motion sensors and thermal imaging showed dozens of life forms cowering in nearby compartments, but no immediate threats. What the Marines found in those first few minutes would haunt some of them for years to come. The Ravok had not been gentle with their prisoners. Alien civilians huddled in corners, many showing signs of beatings and worse treatment. The crystalline Althari had had pieces of their bodies broken off and stolen as souvenirs. The amphibious Forthak had been forced into environments where they couldn't breathe properly. Medic, Jae-sung called as he knelt beside a wounded Clixon whose insectoid wings had been torn. "We need medical attention over here." Corpsman Young-sik moved forward with his medical kit, but stopped when the injured alien recoiled in terror at his approach. The Clixon was looking at Young-sik's armored form and weapons with the same fear it had shown the Ravak soldiers. Young-sik carefully removed his helmet, revealing a young human face with kind eyes. "It's okay," he said softly, using the translation device on his belt to convert his words into the Clixon's clicking language. "I'm here to help you. You're safe now." The injured alien stared at him with compound eyes that reflected confusion and hope. Slowly, carefully, Young-sik began treating the creature's wounds with the same gentle care he would have shown a human child. Similar scenes played out throughout Valara Prime as human marines advanced through the station's corridors. The aliens they rescued showed a mixture of relief and terror at their appearance. To beings who had evolved on peaceful worlds, the sight of armored humans carrying weapons designed for total warfare was almost as frightening as the Ravak occupation had been. Engineer Yoonji worked frantically to restore power to the station's damaged life support systems. The Ravak had shut down several critical systems during their occupation, and some species required specific atmospheric conditions to survive. Her portable repair units, originally designed to fix battle damage on human warships, made quick work of the civilian station's relatively simple technology. "Captain," came a voice over Jae-sung's communication system. "This is Alpha Team. We've found a large group of civilians in the main commercial district, approximately 2,000 beings of various species. They appear to be unharmed but extremely frightened." "Understood, Alpha Team. Establish a security perimeter and begin medical screening." "Bravo Team, report." "Bravo Team here, Captain. We've encountered Ravak soldiers in Section 7. They're using about 50 civilians as shields and demanding safe passage off the station." Jae-sung felt his jaw tighten. This was the scenario they had trained for but hoped to avoid. "Charlie, team, can you get a flanking position on the Ravak in Section 7? "Affirmative, Captain. We can approach through the maintenance tunnels. Give us 5 minutes." Those 5 minutes felt like hours as Jae-sung coordinated the rescue operation. The Ravak soldiers were desperate now, trapped on an enemy-controlled station with no hope of escape. Desperate enemies did stupid things, and stupid things got innocent people killed. "All teams in position," came the report from Charlie team leader. "We have clear shots on all Ravak soldiers. Civilian casualties should be minimal if we move now." "Execute," Jae-sung ordered. The assault was over in seconds. Human marines moved with the precision of a surgical strike, their weapons finding their targets with deadly accuracy while carefully avoiding any civilian in the line of fire. The Ravak soldiers, who had been so confident when facing defenseless aliens, lasted less than 10 seconds against trained human infantry. As the station was gradually secured, the true scope of the Ravak atrocities became clear. Commander Hyun-woo was found in a heavily fortified command center where he had continued broadcasting his SOS signal even while under siege. The human commander was wounded, but alive, and his face showed immense relief when Captain Jae-sung's team broke through to rescue him. "Thank you," Hyun-woo said simply as human medics treated his injuries. "I wasn't sure anyone would come." "We always come," Jae-sung replied. "When innocent people are in danger, humans always come." Throughout the station, the rescued civilians were slowly beginning to understand that their nightmare was over. The humans who had seemed so terrifying at first were treating them with a gentleness that contrasted sharply with their fearsome appearance. Medical teams worked tirelessly to treat injuries. Engineers restored damaged systems. Marines stood guard to ensure that no remaining Ravak soldiers could threaten the survivors. But even as they expressed gratitude for their rescue, many of the aliens couldn't help but feel a deep unease. They had witnessed something that challenged everything they thought they knew about warfare and violence. The humans had destroyed a superior enemy force with such overwhelming efficiency that it barely qualified as a battle. News of the engagement was already spreading through galactic communication networks. Species that had lived in peace for millennia were watching recordings of human warships tearing through the Ravak fleet like it was made of paper. Military analysts who had never seen real combat were trying to understand tactical maneuvers that had been refined through millions of years of human warfare. The rescue of Valara Prime was more than just a military victory. It was a demonstration that humanity remained the most dangerous force in known space, and that their long period of self-imposed isolation could end at any moment if innocent lives were threatened. As the last of the civilians received medical treatment and the station's systems came back online, Captain So-Young prepared to face the political consequences of what they had done. The Galactic Council would demand explanations. Diplomatic protests would follow. There would be investigations and hearings and endless debates about humanity's role in galactic affairs. But 50,000 innocent beings were alive because humans had decided to act when no one else could or would. In the end, that was the only thing that really mattered. 3 days after the Battle of Valara Prime, the emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in the Great Chamber of the orbital station that served as the seat of galactic government. Representatives from 47 species sat in their designated sections, their various forms creating a rainbow of alien life united by one common emotion: fear. The holographic displays at the center of the chamber showed footage from the battle, recorded by automated sensors throughout the Valara system. The images played over and over again, showing human warships destroying Ravok vessels with clinical efficiency. Each loop brought fresh gasps of horror from council members who had never witnessed such overwhelming military superiority. Ambassador Yejin walked calmly to the center of the chamber, her simple black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and ceremonial gear worn by the alien representatives. She was a small woman by human standards, barely reaching the shoulder height of most council members, but her presence commanded immediate attention. The Althari Prime Speaker, a crystalline being whose faceted body reflected the chamber's lights, in prismatic patterns rang the session to order. The Galactic Council recognizes the human representative, Ambassador Yejin. You are here to explain the unprovoked military action taken by human forces against the Ravok Syndicate 3 days ago. Yejin looked around the chamber at the faces, eyes, optical sensors, and other sensory organs focused on her. She could see the fear in every one of them, the terror of beings who had lived in peace for so long that they had forgotten what real predators looked like. Honorable representatives, she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's translation systems. I must correct a fundamental misunderstanding in your accusation. The human military response to the attack on Valara Prime was not unprovoked. It was the answer to a distress call from 50,000 innocent civilians facing enslavement and death. The Vorthak representative, a tall amphibious being whose gill slits fluttered with agitation, rose from his seat. Ambassador, while we appreciate the humanitarian nature of your claimed motivation, the scale of your military response was completely disproportionate. Your 4 vessels destroyed 28 Ravok ships and caused thousands of casualties. Would you have preferred that we allow the Ravok to complete their slave-taking operation? Yejin asked quietly. Should we have limited our response to ensure enemy casualties remained at acceptable levels while innocent beings died? An uncomfortable silence fell over the chamber. Most of the species represented had never faced the choice between allowing atrocities and using overwhelming force to stop them. Their peaceful evolution had not prepared them for such moral complexity. The Klixen hive mind representative spoke through its translation device, its insectoid form twitching with nervous energy. The concern of this council is not the protection of the civilians, which we applaud. The concern is that humanity has demonstrated military capabilities far beyond what we believed existed. Your forces defeated a fleet 10 times their number, without losing a single vessel. And this troubles you because, Yejin asked? Because it means that every diplomatic negotiation, every trade agreement, every political decision made in this galaxy exists only because humanity allows it to exist, the Klixen replied bluntly. If 4 human ships can destroy 40 Ravok vessels, what could 50 human ships do? Or 500? The question hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Every representative in the chamber was thinking the same thing, imagining human fleets sweeping across the galaxy and imposing their will on species that could not possibly resist them. Yejin nodded slowly. Now you begin to understand the burden that humanity has carried for the past century. We did not withdraw from galactic affairs because we were weak or uninterested. We withdrew because our very presence changes the nature of every interaction. She activated a holographic display showing human territorial boundaries, clearly marked zones of space that human vessels rarely left. For 100 years, humanity has voluntarily limited its activities to our own region of space. We have honored trade agreements that favored other species. We have accepted diplomatic decisions that went against our interests. We have allowed ourselves to be portrayed as barely civilized monsters who stumbled onto space travel. The display changed to show communication logs from the Valara Prime incident. But when 50,000 innocent beings called for help and no one else could or would answer, we remembered what our ships and soldiers were actually built for: not conquest, not domination, but protection of those who cannot protect themselves. The chamber erupted in a dozen different languages as representatives began arguing among themselves. Some demanded immediate restrictions on human military activities. Others suggested that humanity should be given a larger role in galactic security. A few quietly wondered if their species should begin developing their own military capabilities. The Althari Prime speaker rang for order. Ambassador, Yejin, what assurances can humanity give that this incident will not lead to further military interventions? None whatsoever, Yejin replied calmly. The simple honesty of her answer sent a shockwave through the chamber. Representatives who had expected diplomatic double-talk were confronted with a truth that none of them wanted to hear. If another Valara Prime happens tomorrow, human forces will respond exactly as they did 3 days ago. Yejin continued. If slavers attack peaceful colonies, we will stop them. If raiders threaten trade routes, we will hunt them down. If any force in this galaxy decides that innocent beings are acceptable casualties in their political games, they will discover why evolution produces apex predators. She looked directly at the Vorthak representative who had questioned their actions. You ask about proportional response as if there is some mathematical formula that determines how much force is acceptable when stopping genocide. Let me explain human proportional response doctrine. We use exactly enough force to ensure that the threat is permanently eliminated and that anyone considering similar actions will choose a different path. The chamber fell silent again as the implications sank in. Humanity was not offering to be a partner in galactic civilization. They were announcing their intention to be its apex predator, the ultimate check against any force that threatened the innocent. Ambassador Yejin began, walking toward the chamber's exit. This council has spent the last 3 days debating the political implications of our actions at Valara Prime. During that same time, human intelligence services have identified 6 other systems where Ravak forces are currently conducting slave raids. Our fleets are already moving to intercept them. She paused at the chamber doors and turned back to address the stunned representatives one final time. Humanity did not choose to be the galaxy's guardian. We chose to be its conscience. The difference is important. A guardian protects by standing watch. A conscience acts when action is needed, regardless of political convenience or diplomatic complications. As the doors closed behind the human ambassador, the chamber remained silent for long minutes. Finally, the Althari Prime speaker spoke into the stillness. It appears that the galaxy has entered a new era. The question before us is whether we adapt to this new reality or attempt to resist it. On the outer rim of civilized space, the Ravak Syndicate was discovering the answer to that question. Warlord Thex's flagship limped into the Kravak system with news of their defeat at Valara Prime, only to find human warships already waiting for them. The battleship Diagu Thunder and its escort fleet had arrived hours earlier and systematically destroyed every Ravak military installation in the system. Admiral Tayman's message to the surviving Ravak forces was simple. The Ravak Syndicate's expansion ends here. Any vessel found conducting raids against civilian populations will be destroyed without warning. Any world used as a base for slaving operations will be occupied by human forces until local leadership demonstrates a commitment to civilized behavior. Across known space, other aggressive species received similar messages. The hegemony, the Talon Empire, the Shadow Collective, all the militant civilizations that had been expanding into peaceful territory, suddenly found human fleets blocking their advance. Ships that had terrorized defenseless worlds for decades were being hunted, down and destroyed by forces they could not hope to match. But the most important message was being received by the peaceful species themselves. On trade routes that had been plagued by pirates, merchant vessels now traveled under the distant but watchful protection of human patrol ships. Colonies that had lived in fear of raids began to plan for expansion and growth. Research stations pushed deeper into unexplored space, knowing that if they encountered hostiles, help would come. The SOS call from Valara Prime had not just summoned humanity's warships. It had announced to the galaxy that the apex predators of Earth had decided to take an active role in the civilization they had helped create. The age of unchallenged aggression was over. In the depths of space, Captain So Young received another distress signal, this one from a mining colony under attack by unknown raiders. She looked at the message on her screen and smiled grimly. "All ships alter course for the Kepler system," she ordered. "Maximum burn. Looks like someone else needs to learn why you don't attack."